This is your host, Danny, and this is English Plus, a podcast from Plus Podcast Network. Do you want to learn the words unequivocal, waver, pursue, raid, venture, privy, ammunition, vital, expedition, and personify? Do you want to learn these words in the context of a story about the great Harriet Tubman, all in a new word power episode from English Plus Podcast? So, do you want to learn about these 10 new words? And of course, the story of the great Harriet Tubman? Join me in this episode where we're going to talk about all that in context. Welcome to a new episode from English Plus Podcast, where you get to learn English, business, culture, literature, and a lot more. Two things to remember: that you will always find extra practice on our website, EnglishPlusPodcast.com, and don't forget to support us on Patreon to help us keep our content free forever. And now, this is your host, Danny, and let's enjoy a new episode from English Plus Podcast. Harriet Tubman. Born a slave in Maryland around the year 1815, Harriet Tubman was forced to work as a field hand by her cruel plantation overseer. In 1849, Tubman fled the plantation, leaving behind her husband, her parents, and her brothers and sisters. Tubman was driven by her belief that all African Americans should be free. Her unequivocal dedication to this cause never wavered. Risking her life as well as her freedom, she returned to the South no fewer than 19 times to lead her family and hundreds of other slaves to freedom. Tubman guided the escaping slaves north along the Underground Railroad, a secret organization that aided the escape of slaves to Canada. None of the fugitives Harriet Tubman led to safety was ever captured. All the while, Tubman herself was pursued by bounty hunters who sought the $40,000 offered for her capture. Tubman later helped John Brown when he planned his attack on Harper's Ferry in 1858. She provided valuable information that helped him carry out his raid. She even planned to participate in the raid but was ill at the time. When the Civil War broke out 3 years later, Tubman assisted the Union Army as a nurse and served as both a scout and a spy. Her knowledge of the land, her experience at secret travel, and her ability to blend easily into groups of people allowed her to carry out her duties without being spotted. She was so important to the Union Army, in fact, that she was a leader of a corps of local blacks who ventured into rebel territory to gather information. Because she was privy to information on the location of warehouses and ammunition depots, she was able to provide vital information to Union commanders. Her information helped Colonel James Montgomery make several expeditions into southern areas to destroy supplies. After the war, Tubman returned to New York, where, while caring for her own family, she helped escaped and newly freed blacks begin their lives. She earned money by giving speeches and selling copies of her biography. In 1896, she was the oldest member present for the organizational meeting of the National Association of Colored Women. Called the Moses of her people, Tubman came to personify the strength and determination that eventually led to the civil rights movement in the 1960s. What a woman! There was no doubt that Harriet Tubman was a unique person that rose to the occasion just in time when people really needed her. I hope you enjoyed the story. I hope you learned something new about Harriet Tubman you didn't know about before. But let's focus on what we're here to do today, and that is to learn the words, the 10 words I told you about in the context of our story of Harriet Tubman. And let's start with our very first word, unequivocal. 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 Now let's see how we use this word in context. We said her unequivocal dedication to this cause, which is freeing African Americans, and the belief she had that African Americans should be free. That is the cause we're talking about. Her unequivocal dedication to this cause never wavered. So what is the meaning of unequivocal? Are we talking about something that changes? Not at all. If you describe someone's attitude as unequivocal, you mean that it is completely clear and very firm, unchanging, never change. And that leads us actually to the next word, which is exactly in the same sentence. Her unequivocal dedication to this cause never wavered. The next word is waver, W-A-V-E-R. So what is the meaning of waver? And here we said never wavered. It was just used in negative. Now, if you waver, you cannot decide about something or you consider changing your mind about something. That is when you waver. It's like when you hesitate or when you are irresolute. But that was not the case for Harriet Tubman. Her unequivocal dedication to the cause never wavered. She was never hesitant. She never hesitated. She was always resolute. She knew exactly what she wanted. And the cause, in her mind, her dedication to the cause never wavered. And that was our second word. Now let's move on and talk about the third word, pursue. And that is P-U-R-S-U-E, pursue. Now let's see how we use this word in context. We said, all the while, Tubman herself was pursued by bounty hunters who sought the $40,000 offered for her capture. So, what do we mean by she was pursued? Now, if you pursue a person, vehicle, or animal, you follow them, usually in order to catch them. So, people followed her and they wanted to catch her to get the bounty, of course. These were the bounty hunters. They sought the $40,000. And if you just consider the $40,000 back at that time, for Harriet Tubman, that was a lot of money because she was causing a lot of damage to these slavers and plantation owners. She helped hundreds of slaves escape to freedom, and that's why she was pursued. She was followed, and bounty hunters wanted to catch her. So that was our word, pursue. Now for the next word, raid, R-A-I-D, raid. Now let's see how we use that in context. Now we said that she helped John Brown when he planned his attack on Harper's Ferry in 1858. She provided valuable information that helped him carry out his raid. And she even planned to participate in the raid. What is the meaning of raid? Now, when soldiers raid a place, they make a sudden armed attack against it with the aim of causing damage rather than occupying any of the enemy's land. That is essentially the meaning of raid. And that was what John Brown did. And she helped him back then. She helped him plan the attack, or what we call the raid on Harper's Ferry in 1858. So that was raid. Now let's move on and talk about the next word, and that is venture. V-E-N-T-U-R-E, venture. Now let's see how we use that in context. We said she was so important to the Union Army, in fact, that she was a leader of a corps of local blacks who ventured into rebel territory to gather information. So what does it mean to venture somewhere? And here, when we talk about venture somewhere, we're talking about somewhere dangerous. If you venture somewhere, you go somewhere that might be dangerous. And here, they did it because they had a cause. And remember the word, her belief, and of course, the belief of many people who were with her back then, never wavered. That's why nothing could stop Harriet Tubman or the people with her to venture into rebel territory. Although it was dangerous, but she ventured there anyway. That's the meaning of venture. And now for the next word, privy. P-R-I-V-Y. Privy. Now let's see how we use that in context. We said because she was privy to information on the locations of warehouses and ammunition depots, she was able to provide vital information to Union commanders. Actually, here we have three words we will talk about: privy, ammunition, and vital. But let's start with privy. So she was privy to information. What does that mean? If you are privy to something secret, you have been allowed to know about it. You are in the know. You are informed. You are aware of something. You are privy to. And we use to with privy all the time. So we say you are privy to information. What kind of information? It's kind of secret information usually. We cannot say you are privy to common information that everybody knows, right? We use that when we want to talk about secret information. And she was obviously privy to information on the location of warehouses and ammunition depots, and she was able to provide vital information to Union commanders. And that brings me to the next word within the same sentence here, and that is ammunition. ammunition. We talked about warehouses, and there is here the ammunition depots. What is the meaning of ammunition? Ammunition is bullets and rockets that are made to be fired from guns. All kinds of rounds and shots and shells and munitions are called ammunition. And that is what she knew, and that was vital. And that is our next word, vital, vital. What does that mean? If you say that something is vital, you mean that it is necessary or very important. So here we're talking about vital information to Union commanders. The information she provided was essential, important, necessary, was vital. All right? So that brings me to the next word, expedition. 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 Now let's see how we use this in context. Now we talked about the vital information she provided to Union commanders, and here we continued on and said that her information helped Colonel James Montgomery make several expeditions into southern areas to destroy supplies. What do we mean by expeditions here? An expedition is an organized journey that is made for a particular purpose, such as exploration. It's like a journey or a mission or voyage. Now here, it's more like a mission because we're talking about a mission to destroy supplies. So that is an army thing. We can use expedition here. We can use expedition in scientific contexts as well, like when we say an expedition to the North Pole, to the South Pole, to a mountain, to discover a place, to do some science, etc. That is an expedition as well. But remember, we're talking about an organized journey. It's not just like going on vacation or something. No, it's an organized journey for a purpose, for a particular purpose. That is what we call expedition. So it can be for exploration or it can be a mission. It can be a mission to do something, just like our example here, to destroy supplies, like what Colonel James Montgomery did. He made several expeditions into southern areas to destroy supplies. And now for our final word for today, and that is personify. 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 Now let's see how we use that in context. Now, we said that she was called the Moses of her people. And you know what Moses did. If you don't know, it's simply that he led his people to freedom. From Egypt, where they were enslaved by the Egyptians, he led his people to freedom, and that is exactly what Harriet Tubman did. She did the same thing. Of course, in a different time, on a different scale, but it's kind of the same thing, and that's why they called her the Moses of her people. And here we said, Tubman came to personify the strength and determination that eventually led to the civil rights movement in the 1960s. She personified this strength. What does that mean? If you say that someone personifies a particular thing or quality, you mean that they seem to be a perfect example of that thing, or to have it. To have that, to be the embodiment of that, to embody this thing, to represent this thing, to express this thing, to personify. That is the meaning of personify. And let me remind you again quickly that we talked about 10 words in the context of our story today about Harriet Tubman. We talked about unequivocal, waver, pursue, raid, venture, privy, ammunition, vital, expedition, and personify. Now, don't forget that you can find extra exercises, interactive activities, PDF downloadable worksheet, and more on our website, EnglishPlusPodcast.com. You can find the link in the description. Take the link and take your English with it to the next level. And if you're kind of wondering that you heard at the beginning of the episode that English Plus is a podcast from Plus Podcast Network, That is the new thing that is coming your way in the next 2 weeks. We are going to add new podcasts to our podcast network. Of course, our flagship podcast is English Plus. And don't worry, it will stay the same. It will be free as it has always been, and it will always be. And I'm not taking anything away from English Plus. Actually, we're adding things to it. We're adding free podcasts and some premium podcasts. I'll be talking more about that in the episodes to come to tell you how you can find the channel, which is going to be Plus Podcast Network, which will include more than 12 podcasts talking about a variety of topics, from education to fiction to arts and culture to business, history, science, and more. So, 2 things to remember. Don't forget to take your English and use the things you've learned by practicing them, and we've got you covered. Everything you need is on our website. Actually, the link will take you to the custom post we created for this episode with all the interactive activities and everything you need. The PDF downloadable worksheet, everything. Take the link and practice using those words because you don't want to forget them. You want to add them to your active vocabulary bank, right? And the only way to do that is by practicing these words. And another thing, of course, if you would like to support English Plus, you can take the other link that will take you to our Patreon page where you can support English Plus. And by the way, talking about Patreon is going to be one of the main ways you can have access to all our premium podcasts in Plus Podcast Network. But I will be talking more about that later. I will give you more details, and I will be talking about the new podcasts that will be added to the network so that you know what we're going to include in our Plus Podcast Network. Now, with that being said, this is your host, Danny. I would like to thank you very much for listening to another episode from English Plus Podcast. I will see you next time.